Well, hello everyone, and happy Monday to you. It's good to be with you. Let's get started with reading from my dad's Bible. My favorite part. I am so blessed that I had a father who loved the Lord, a mother who loved the Lord. Above all, my parents served God as missionaries, and we did not have a perfect family, but they taught me to trust Jesus. So I opened up my father's Bible today, and I just randomly picked a place that went to Psalms 35, 36, 37 is on this page. Multiple verses are underlined, starred, circled, and so a couple things it says in Psalms 35, 28, and my tongue shall speak of thy righteousness and of thy praise all the day long. Then over in Psalms 36, he's underlined, circled these areas. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. You know, none of this says the Lord gives you the desires of your heart because you are demanding it of him, because you think that you are a little God and you are deserving of it. No. It's the same way you love your kids. And when they bless you, you just want to bless them. So when you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your ways to him. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And then over in Psalms 37, he's underlined two verses, verse 22. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord, and he delights in his way. So God delights in the way of good men. He orders your steps. He loves when you delight yourself in him. And this is over and over and over taught. So when you're wondering, how do I get the favor and the blessing of the Lord? Well, you delight yourself in him. What are some ways that we can delight ourselves in the Lord? Well, this weekend, I just took some time out to just be with God. I love to do it while I'm driving. You know, now that we have a modern day age, it's so cool. People don't think you're crazy if you're just talking out loud to God in your car. You know, in the olden days, you'd drive past a car before cell phones and such. And if you saw someone talking to themselves, you'd be like, whoa, okay, Lulu. Now, you can see a woman or a man just yelling in their car by themselves, and you don't think they're crazy anymore. You can see people walking down the street by themselves, fully talking out loud, having a whole conversation. No one thinks that's crazy because we've got the phones. So now it's so cool because I'm able to just drive and just fully talk to God out loud, and no one thinks I'm crazy. It's a joy. And I have told the Lord, I want to delight his heart. I want to be a courageous and faithful servant to do what God asked me to do and to not have fear of man. And that's why we do what we do. Well, I had an interesting weekend. I want to do a couple of emails before we get into a couple of clips to just highlight sort of the crazy that's going on in the world. You know, it was interesting that in this driving around that I was doing, talking to God out loud and not looking insane. I mean, I did have a terrible thing happen this last weekend. So it drives me crazy. And it does make my husband even crazier. You know, these people that are driving and not paying attention, or, you know, it's always problematic. But then it's also problematic. Like JT and I have this thing where we go, are we the only ones when you get in a lane, it comes to a standstill? Like you try to pick the best lane that's moving, right? So I turned left and I turned into, you know, another street. And my lane goes right behind this traffic that has come to a stop. All these people are just going by, whipping by. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, Laura-Lynn, be patient. Don't get mad. Don't get frustrated. It's just a lane. Delight yourself in the Lord. Just be in the lane and just wait. I turn around, all these cars. I mean, everyone's moving on the left-hand lane, the one I didn't choose. And in this right lane, no one's moving. This happens to my husband and I. We go up to the border. You know, you try to get across the border or something, and you got like 4 lanes to pick from. Inevitably, I don't know what it is. It's a joke, you know, and we know our angels laugh. And then it's an exercise in patience. So I'm waiting there. I'm like, don't get mad. Don't get mad. Just breathe it in. You know, finally, all the cars are gone and there's no one there. And I'm like, okay, I do not know what is wrong with these people in front. Why? Like, am I in a turning lane up ahead to turn right? Like, what is wrong? And I pull out and go past. No one's in the vehicle. No one is in the next 15 vehicles because they were all parked cars. I just, you know, like, life is not always about the big things that frustrate you. It's also the little tiny things. Thinking that you're in a lane that should actually be moving when you are waiting for parked cars to move. Anyways, all right, I'll say nothing more except how frustrating. Well, one more thing, my phone. Do any of you have a bug in your phone that it literally switches your contacts with the numbers, or it adds numbers into your contacts that shouldn't be in that contact? I was literally having 2 different conversations, and you know, there was this fellow, I was trying to buy something off of Craigslist, just a small thing, you know, a household item, and all of a sudden his email contact gets confused with my assistant Janina's number, and I'm like saying things to Janina that are actually going to the Craigslist guy. I mean, by the end, and it literally says my assistant's number at the top, but somehow it has added. So I had to go into the contact and see that it had added the contact in. Now, this happened in a huge way about a month ago. And then I turned the phone off and I thought that I caught it because I was, you know, texting who I think is the person, the contact name, and I'm texting someone completely different. Absolutely frustrating. And in all of these things, we say, we delight ourselves in the goodness of the Lord. He will help us to bear with these things. All right, so I got this amazing mail, and I'm so grateful. Let me just do this one first. So this person, I just thank you so very, very much. And this is Dorothy. So after all of these sort of little bit of complaints that you've made, Dorothy, you say this. You say, to me, you are the only one in Canada I pay any attention to anymore. As for all the separatist movements, various freedom groups, etc., I think it's all circus clowns and mirrors, and most are in it for their own agenda. And you were a fan of so-and-so, but now you've changed your mind, and basically you've narrowed it down, and we are the ones that you trust. And you say in closing, thank you for all you and JT do to expose the lies on so many fronts. Your simple and no-nonsense approach to it all is refreshing. God bless. Well, God bless you. Thank you very, very much. I have another email here, and this is from a very cool person, and this is Linda, and you say, basically, I think I can bring this up a little bit. All right. Hi, Laura. I am from the UK, and I enjoy listening to your videos, especially about the situation regarding Daystar. I find you are measured in your approach and absolutely on point. I used to watch Daystar on a regular basis and thought very highly of Marcus and Joni. I always felt like Joni liked Doug even before Marcus died. I used to get a check in my spirit about Doug and an uneasy feeling whenever he appeared on Daystar. When Joni announced her engagement that day on Table Talk and Doug appeared, my first reaction was, oh no, Joni, what have you done? And that was before I knew any details. Now, I want to say that this is a remark that I have heard over and over and over again. And that is that there was a check in those of genuine faith, the remnant, those who had spiritual discernment, not just Miss Denise Boggs, who had intimate knowledge, but person after person after person had a check in their spirit regarding the situation with Doug and about him personally. And so I think that what this lady has brought to light is something that we all have to pay attention to moving forward. We cannot give our discernment away to anyone else. We cannot give our discernment on prophets and apostles and those that claim they are such to anybody else. Guess what? The power of the Holy Spirit is for us today. He is there for you at a moment's notice. When you delight in Him, it says that God, He will bless your life and you will inherit the earth. That is not because you listen to so-and-so. And this discernment part has really, this is the issue that we are all battling right now, is because there's a lot of people who want to tell you who to put your discernment in. For Joni Lamb, her discernment and what she wanted to hear with itching ears and a tickling at her spirit, she wanted to hear what she wanted to hear. And the people that gave her that kind of information, well, that was Redwig. That was her other besties that sit at the table that she was at. Several of the prophetic words she would say she would have, even citing Drenda, whose son now faces umpteen years. I mean, hopefully they throw away the key, because somebody who has molested so many people, you know, allegedly, it's in the courts. To me, once there's credible verification, you're talking about pretty much that the people who have come forward have been verified. These are true stories. And Tom Cassie faces a lot of years in jail. And if you want to follow closely what's happening in Ohio, I would suggest following Vanessa Johnson on her podcast. You know, it's interesting. I watch a lot of videos. I look into a lot of different people, and some of you are sending me things and you're saying, well, hey, look at this. So a lot of things, you know, come across my desk. So I was watching this very trusted prophetic voice that's here in Canada, and it was from January 2020. And you would think, if you look back and you remember that January 2020 was the beginning of, you know, sort of something that hit us like a storm across the world, the kind of storm we have never seen. And this prophetic voice was talking about how God was going to be restoring, and God was going to be, you know, giving a measure back to the people of God, when in actual fact, what happened in 2020, it was a whole lot of things that were not given back. So who we listen to is so important. And of course, the scandal at Bethel with Sean Bolts, we covered it last week, but I found this, I just had to show this to you. Here is a clip of Sean Bolts, and he is basically saying, you know, he had this prophetic dream or whatever, and it, you know, it had to do with the Bethel leadership's family member. So, I mean, this guy, it's just something. And when you look back after he's been busted for using Facebook as his place to get information, when you look back, you go, of course he just doesn't seem credible. But back in the day when he gave this prophetic word, everyone believed him. Oh, he was hailed as the great prophet Sean Bolts, who can read your mail off Facebook. So this is what he said.
Every one of God's mysteries, there's always a counterfeit. Recently, when I was at a church called Bethel in California, and the pastor there is Pastor Bill Johnson, and I was caught up into a visionary experience, and I was seeing a man who'd gone on to be in heaven just a few years ago named Bob Jones, who was a prophet, and he was talking to another man, and the other man's name is Melvin. This man ended up being Bill Johnson's father. There's a release, like I said, just like a Bob Jones word. It was exactly how he would give a word. So this is literal. I'm not trying to do spiritism. I'm not trying to do necromancy, voodoo, any of these religions. There's a release of great provision that's coming out of the anointing to plant the oaks of righteousness, which is one of Bob Jones' favorite words, is the oaks of righteousness he talked about all the time.
There's some similarities that we see in these national stories, as well as each and every one of us homegrown stories where people in your own city and town are being outed. But here's the thing. These predators will have big personalities. They are bold. They They lie so loudly and proudly that you think, how can this not be true? How can they deny what is so very evident? I mean, are they really guilty? Are they really evil if they do it so brazenly? And wolves are brazen. Wolves are cunning and vicious, and they're brazen. And we have to watch for them in the family of God. What's happening locally here in Canada is brazen wolves, one in particular, denying accusations that are leveled against them with a huge personality and a large way of being. And this person then has the ability to brazenly, boldly convince others that they're speaking the truth, even though there's a wealth of evidence against them. So that even board members don't do anything about it. People that are in close circles hang out with them, get their selfies and pictures and videos taken with them. And, you know, once upon a time, think about some folks who had pictures taken with big celebrities, and then those celebrities want them wiped off the internet after there's exposure. You know, you think of the Epstein files. Nobody wants to be seen in a picture after there's finally the truth that comes out about Epstein. And we're kind of in a situation where our Christian world has been seized by brazen wolves, and they just lie casually. I want to show you a clip of Paula White. Now, this is by Susan Puzio putting these things together, and I love her. Please follow Susan Puzio. Watch her on her channel. Watch as Ohio for Freedom has done shows with her exposing Paula White. Paula White, just like Todd White, is able to change stories. You know, at this occasion it's one thing, and this occasion it's another, and they brazenly tell lies. Take a look.
Rest of my story, when my mom remarried when I was 9 years old, she married a two-star admiral, public assistance. They didn't know who they were talking to. They thought they were just talking to a young 19-year-old girl that didn't have insurance, and they looked at a little poor, living in a trailer for no money.
When Paula and I were dating, but her dad was an admiral in the Navy, so she was living at Bethesda Naval Hospital. Her dad was over the medicine. She was living in Bethesda Naval Hospital.
So which is it? You know, Paula White, were you a poor girl in a trailer park, or your father was an admiral in the Navy? It's fascinating, but one thing is for sure, these folks who like to tell untruths are able to do it boldly and loudly, brazenly, and like the wolves that they are, it's disconcerting for those who don't do it. Do you know why we have a hard time seeing wolves? Is because we are not one. So we don't recognize it. We're like, wow, if I was shouting this loudly about something, it'd be because I was telling the truth, because you're a truth teller. You have integrity and honesty in your heart, and therefore you would not be found doing these crazy things, saying these things, changing up stories of who you were and where you came from, and you know, all of the mass wealth that, you know, this, I don't think I got the video ready, but, you know, Paula White recently asking for the $1,000 that she needs. God will supply. God will supply. He is helping those who are doing the right thing. And we're seeing it in our lives, and we're just so very grateful. There's just been some help that has come to us. We're just, you know, just overwhelmed that the Lord will take care of us. We just have to keep speaking the truth. We don't have to be intimidated. We don't have to worry. And, you know, we told you recently about our camera being broken. So I'll tell you a little bit more later. But basically, you know, some people are going to help us to make sure that we've got the right equipment. And we're grateful. We're beyond blessed. We can't even fathom it. We're overwhelmed by the Lord causing people to want to help. And one of the things that I've heard repeatedly now from some of you all is that you're no longer able to just give to these big ministries. You've had to call it quits on all of that. You won't support them. You know, once you can see that there's waste, that there's an accumulation of magnificent wealth, you know, because you're doing God's work. Some things ought not to be. And if there is a lot of needs in the world that could be helped, that is the kind of thing that finances should go. There should be an abundance of helping those. It should never be that you end up having a mass amount. I'm talking like an extraordinary amount of wealth because you're serving the Lord. That's fraud. Something's gone wrong. And we're seeing it. We've showed the clips on these people. You know, sooner or later, you begin to say, all right, had enough. I'm not going to be fooled anymore by any of that. Now, one of the things that we're also not seeing is just an accountability where the SA of young boys and girls is increasing in the world. And we as parents have to protect our kids. And we have seen this in a huge way in the Daystar saga that has gone on, that once a disclosure has come, and of course, there was no suspecting things, because why? Because you trust an individual in the family. You have trust because so-and-so is an uncle. And this is exactly the kind of thing that is not only hitting big families and is prevalent in a lot of these big ministries, but it's hitting home. It's hitting our families. So coming up, I do have Dr. Kelli Palfy, who's going to talk about how to recognize if there are signs that your child has been facing this. We've got people doing some work, I think, outside, JT. I'm just going to ignore it. But I want to throw to something. I want to throw to basically the story that Joni Lamb has stuck to with respect to Pete. And that is that he's innocent. And this is no different than a lot of families who refuse. It's just denial, denial, denial. They refuse to see what is actually going on in the family. Take a look at this short clip regarding sort of a brief underline of what Joni Lamb has done.
In a statement that has left viewers stunned, Joni claims that Pete is innocent, asserting that the accusations stem from a misunderstanding involving a boy in preschool. This revelation comes amidst an already tumultuous time for the Lamb family, with tensions between Jonathan and Susie Lamb adding fuel to the fire. Daystar Television Network co-founder and President Joni Lamb refuted allegations from her son, Jonathan Lamb, and his wife, Susie, regarding her alleged cover-up of sexual abuse involving a family member. The controversy has not only shaken the Lamb family, but has also garnered significant public attention, prompting Joni to publicly address the accusations in great detail, while calling out what she perceives as a smear campaign against her and the legacy of her late husband, Marcus Lamb. Joni Lamb began her defense by categorically denying any involvement in covering up abuse within her family. She emphasized that the claims, centered on her granddaughter, stem from a misunderstanding and have been manipulated to create a damaging narrative. I will just say absolutely a lie, Joni declared during the broadcast, when asked about allegations that she and Marcus had concealed the abuse. I never covered up anything. I wouldn't cover up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything. This is a narrative written by some low-level blogger who knows nothing, never heard the other side of the story, and is doing nothing but trying to destroy my family. Joni's statements directly challenge the claims made by Jonathan and Susie Lamb in an interview with investigative journalist Julie Roys of the Roys Report.
You know, in Ephesians 5, I'm going to read verses 3 to 6. It says, "But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, or of any kind of impurity, or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Not even a hint of greed, not a hint of sexual impropriety, not a hint of it. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. Rather, may we be thankful. Thank you, Lord. For of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person is an adulterer, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore, do not be partners with them. I'll tell you one thing that I don't want. I'm just going to underline this so that my kids will read it one day. But I don't want to be a partner and incur the wrath of God. We are watching the wrath of God being poured out in certain situations. We are watching the uncovering and the flipping of the tables and the exposure, because God is cleaning house, because he wants a holy people. He is coming for a pure and spotless bride. And he's cleaning it up because of these things. And my guest that is coming up, she talks about post-abuse maintenance behavior. And this is the cover-up. This is where pedophiles are covered up, mainly because the disgrace to the family. You don't want to see, this propagated because it's costly to you personally, and you just can't take that. There's pride, there's ego involved, and the absolute refusal to see the truth. And I believe that is what we have been dealing with. And in the letters that we have read, Joni Lamb continues to send letters. And some of you, you're sending me the letters that you're getting from Daystar. Absolute denial of everything. Despite Rebecca and JW's position, which of course, they are now compromised. Despite the concern of Jonathan and Susie. And not even these concerns led ultimately to the great fracturing of the Lamb family. But it was sin. It was sin. It was the denial of sin. If there's anything I would say to you is, let us be found faithful to God, with open eyes, looking at our own hearts, examining what we are doing wrong, asking God to help us, to show us, Lord, if there be any wicked way in me, show it to me. So I want to introduce you to my guest today. She's amazing, Dr. Kelli Palfy. Take a look. My guest today, Dr. Kelli Palfy, began her professional career working in adult and youth corrections. She noticed a disproportionate number of males in the system and wondered why this was the case. After becoming an RCMP, that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, she specialized in sex crimes committed against children internationally. Here, when reviewing seized video evidence, observed the grooming tactics commonly used by sophisticated pedophiles and witnessed that males were common victims of sexual abuse, but not reporting their crimes. She wanted to understand why and make a difference in this area. After leaving the RCMP, Dr. Palfy obtained her PhD in counseling psychology and conducted her doctoral research examining the reasons why males were not reporting sexual abuse. She is now a trained trauma therapist, the author of 4 books, and public speaker on the topic of male sexual abuse. Dr. Palfy currently runs a private practice where she works with male survivors of abuse, first responders, and couples using emotion-focused and cognitive behavioral approach, plus eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is an incredible tool I'm hearing, EMDR. Outside of her professional life, she loves hiking, swimming, kayaking, and living and doing things that are not as stressful as what you do in your day job. Dr. Kelli Palfy, thank you for joining us today. And I kind of slipped there, but you are in the Edmonton area in Canada, and people should know that so that they can know where to get a hold of you. This is really outstanding. You have written 4 books, basically underlining and highlighting this issue of male sexual abuse.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to share about them. So I'm grateful to be here.
Yes, thank you. Tell us about your first book and why that one, you were propelled and compelled to do that, obviously affected by what you'd seen as an RCMP officer.
Well, the honest reasons were a bit of conviction, to be truthful. Like I said, like you mentioned, I was working in the ICE unit, and I was seeing instances of boys being abused, and we were working on Canada's first, or RCMP's first sex tourism charges. So it was Kenneth Klassen out of the US, and he had brought home a box full of videos, and we had presented Crown with, kind of what we would refer to through the books at them, at him. And Crown said, that's way too many charges. And my boss had said, we got to pare it down. So their automatic advice to me was, don't worry about the boys. And sometime during that, we also had training from Sheldon Kennedy, who was, of course, one of the first men to ever come forward about sexual abuse. And he talked about the reasons why he didn't disclose his abuse. So it just really opened my eyes. And like you said, I had worked in corrections before. When I was listening to him speak, it was like my heart just bled for him. It was a word of knowledge. The Lord just opened my eyes to the fact that, boys are being abused and they're not getting the same support as girls. So I just remember way back in that day wanting to make a difference. But of course, we're working with, we were working with child cases. I couldn't go and pursue, helping men. Fast forward a few years, I did leave the RCMP, and then I decided to make it the subject of my doctoral research. I wanted to know why boys and men were not reporting their abuse. I wanted to understand it. And like you said, I wanted to make a difference. So then I did that, and I wrote a book about it. So my first book is called Men Too: Unspoken Truths About Male Sexual Abuse.
I've been in shock, like just covering this, recent exposures and things that are happening, that it's not just girls, it really is young men, and it's so many. And parents are not really, and one of the things that you've written about and highlighting is how parents need to be more aware. But before we get there, one of the things, like as you were in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I mean, is it shocking how much of this is happening? It's like the enemy is just trying to get kids at their earliest.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the statistics here. Basically, for context, in 2002, when I was in the ICE unit, we handled all of the ICE files in all of BC that ever came in. I'm in Alberta now, but my clients who are largely police tell me that each police officer has about 7 files each, and they no longer do any sort of proactive work. So just for context, when we would get a file, we would seize, for example, an offender's computer and give it to tech crimes, and they would uncover that offender's address book, and it would be filled with email addresses of other possible offenders that they were trading images with, and we couldn't do any proactive work. So yeah, it's like, I always said, it's like the drug scene in Surrey. It is so much more common than most people think.
It's mind-boggling, and I'm thinking, what kind of sick people, like, so you're really ill and you harm children, and then you trade your contacts with other people. There's an element of this that is so evil, I can barely stand it. What is the statute of limitations for getting people charged? Are you able to help me with that in
There's
BC?
no statute of limitations. In Canada, there's no statute of limitations for sex crimes.
Okay.
So we're lucky to live in Canada. Yeah. The US, different states have different rules, but in Canada, no statute of limitations.
Okay.
That means you can come forward anytime.
Right. And so you not only stopped there, but you went on to other books why did you feel, obviously there's a lot to write about, but what was it that compelled you to just keep putting this down on paper?
Seeing the need, seeing more and more reports of, pedophiles being exposed and stuff like that. And, the increase in kids going missing and all that stuff. Yeah, just wanting to be able to educate the public generally about, how do we deal with this? Wanting to educate mothers this time around about, the warning signs, the warning signs of a child being abused, the warning signs of a pedophile infiltrating an environment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you do talk about a little bit about warning signs that maybe perhaps your son is, or daughter for that matter, are being harmed. What would you say those are?
Well, and I do focus exclusively on boys because there is already an emphasis for girls out there. So, and I do think there is a difference, when we consider, even just biology and gender biases and stuff. Abuse impacts males in different ways, in similar ways, but also in different ways than it affects girls and women. So, sorry, I forget your question. You wanted to know.
Definitely about the warning. Like how would we know as mothers and fathers if we begin to see some signs that our child, is
Right.
being impacted?
Right. And, to be honest, there are no telltale signs, where we can look and say, okay, for sure that child was abused. Just to give you the background of one of my participants in my research, he was being abused by his mother on a regular basis, and he knew in his own mind he would have to kind of get himself out of that situation. If he wanted to have a better life for himself, he knew he had to go to university. So he became a model student. He was a high achiever. He was an athlete. Like, nobody would have been able to tell he was victimized. He went to great lengths to hide it. So we don't, we kind of have to, I would say we kind of have to know all the angles. We have to watch for the signs of a pedophile. We have to watch for the signs of a child being abused. But to give you some signs, yes, in early stages of life, like in early childhood, if an infant or child starts to regress in their developmental stages, that's a huge red flag. Children often don't have the language to say, Mom, I was sexually abused today at daycare. So they'll come home and they'll say, Mom, I didn't like the games we played. So then, that's when parents have to say, okay, well, what games did you play? Like a typical parent might just say, hey, play nice. You have to play nice. So we just have to be really aware that if a child is saying something like that, okay, ask one more question. What kind of games? Tell me about the games. If your child has a tummy ache, or if they're having nightmares, or they're falling asleep in class, or not able to sleep at night, oftentimes there's a reason. So those are some of the earlier warning signs in younger children. As you get into the teen and pubescent and teenage years, sudden changes in character and behavior, right? And that's a big one. I think a lot of parents are often more likely to chalk it up as a rite of passage or a maturing or just coming of age kind of thing. But sudden changes in character, I'll give you an example like that's in my book. Aaron was my participant's name from my research. He said he went off to basketball camp. He loved his coach. His coach was a friend of the family. He loved his coach. And when he came back, he hated basketball, hated his coach, quit basketball. That's an extreme change in character and behavior, right? He distanced himself from his mom. He'd been close to his mom before he went away, and then all of a sudden he started distancing himself. Those are a lot of things happening all at once. So as I mentioned, like he was, Aaron's basketball coach was his offender. So pedophiles will work really hard. They groom themselves before they ever groom a child. They first groom themselves to fit the part. So they'll get the necessary education. They'll establish themselves with a good reputation, maybe not even offend against a child during that time. Or if they are, it's not in that community. It will be somewhere else. While they set themselves up in a particular environment where they will have access to, for example, their age and gender of preference. Then only after they're well liked, after they've got this sort of backstopping done, if you will, that's when they start to, get closer to certain families after they've picked a child as their target, as who they want. So they are that premeditated. So it's really, I have a 45-minute series on my website, kellipalfy.com, where parents can go and watch what I have to teach about grooming techniques. 45 minutes. It's very elaborate, very detailed. I talk about the different types of pedophiles and how they target children differently.
Right, and a lot of this, if let's say that it's a family member, so the trusted uncle, the trusted person in the family, it's so disturbing if it's actually the parents. I just don't know what kind of sick, nasty world that we have, but parents would be less suspect, as in the big case in Daystar, of a trusted uncle until some signs begin to come forward. But then there's this willful denial, like this nobody can really see. So even if there's an out or people get concerned about this one person, nobody wants to believe that about this family member. Therefore, there's all of this, literal, denial of what's right in front of them.
Absolutely. And that is literally chapter 6 in my next book. It's about why we can't depend on other people, because it's like our brains are wired to live in community, to live in harmony. And so people will see things that might be concerning to them, but then they'll sort of do this, irrational thought process in their mind. And the reality is that they know that if what they suspect is true, that it would just be awful, that it would be catastrophic, that it will just kind of blow everybody's world up. So it's literally a neurobiological process. We refer to it as willful blindness, where, neurons will rush in and reassure them that what they're seeing probably isn't happening. And they choose to go with that thought process rather than, most people anyways. But honestly, in most victims' stories that I've ever talked to, there's always somebody who's witnessed it. There's always somebody who knew, or at least should have known, something was going on. So I talk about that in my book as well. We call that enablers now, when someone sees and does nothing.
Because we have that also going on in church circles. You talk about these people that they either get the education or they get the position, and then they work the position so that they are able then to become the predator. And then as time goes on, there's allegations, but nobody wants to really, follow up on that. Nobody's, a lot of people just don't have the strength to come down on it. Years and years later, you see that boards that represent churches or even schools, they don't act with attention to this because, well, first of all, you have to be super strong. The predator is denying it anyways, saying all kinds of nasty things about any of the victims to discredit them. And nobody has the strength to go after these predators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Laura, one of the things that I talk about in my books is predators will often target kids who have a history of lying, for example. Mom's already having problems with Billy because he lies. Oh, perfect target for a predator, right? And then there's also this, you said, like, how much courage it takes to come forward. Well, offenders will engage in post-abuse maintenance behaviors. So they'll posture with people in positions of authority. They'll be showing the victim, look, nobody's going to believe you. Look, I'm friends with the police chief. I'm friends with the head pastor. Like, you're just a kid with a reputation for lying. So there's a lot of really complex things that take place, especially when predators target boys, that impact their ability to talk about it or their desire to talk about it. It's actually quite complex.
Sure. And they also target anyone who actually calls them to account and begins saying things. Then that person becomes their target as well. Oh, they're evil. Oh, they're liars. They're ungodly. This is the accusation of the enemy.
Discredit the whistleblower. Absolutely. That's the prime tactic.
Could you talk to me a little bit about the outfall from male sexual abuse? Like what do males suffer and go through, and the prognosis for healing from that, and some of the ways that you recommend healing?
Well, obviously it depends on their age and stage of development when their abuse occurred. So it affects them differently if they were, say, before the age of having learned how to self-soothe. It depends on who their abuser was. Again, like you mentioned, if it's a parent, right? Now they're not living in a safe environment. That makes a very big difference compared to whether it was a one-time situation with, an uncle that doesn't visit again, right? So if a child has develop the skill of self-soothing prior to their abuse, if they have a better support system, like they know mom and dad are safe, they have, a stronger likelihood of it impacting them less. than if it's a child that's being abused at home, or say before they've developed that skill of self-soothing. So yeah, and it also depends on, who, of course, who their abuser was, right? The degree of betrayal. Is it mom? Is it a stranger? Is it teacher? Right? So, and their post-abuse supports too. Do they think that if they told people they'd be believed? Do they believe, who are their parents, right? If they see their parents, laughing at male rape jokes on TV, for example, they're probably not going to feel very safe about telling the truth about what happened to them. So it's really complicated when it comes to boys. But the prognosis for support, Laura, even as a trained trauma therapist, I know you're a believer, obviously. I tell my clients I can help, but you want healing, that's not my job, that's his.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, it's God's job.
Yeah, I can help. Oh my gosh, but he heals.
He's the one who heals. And could you tell me a little bit about EMDR? We have covered it on the show, but I have heard from a couple of people that it was helpful in somehow the movement or whatever causes like healing in the brain. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Sure. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And there are different ways to do it. And, they say that we don't really know how it works. But my understanding of it is that, we're doing some sort of a bilateral stimulation, which in itself research shows is healing. But the way I make sense of it is that bilateral movement is keeping the client kind of present and grounded in the here and now. And my questions towards them, which would be things like, tell me the negative belief that you have about yourself. Tell me what's the image that comes to your mind. What are your emotions that you have? Where do you feel that in your body? Those are the questions I would ask a client in, our traditional type of EMDR, and then start the bilateral process. So that allows them to go back into their memory banks to recover these traumatic memories, but also keeps them present here in time. And then as we go through the stages of EMDR, I'm monitoring scale 0 to 10. Tell me how you're feeling about this. Tell me how strong that sensation is in your body. And I'm doing what we call cognitive interweave. So if they're believing lies about themselves, I'm, speaking truth over them as they're talking to me.
That's amazing. And one therapist from the United States was talking to me about how they would, you'd be able to do it without causing more trauma, because one of the things people are fearful of is, I don't want to relive all of this and I want to go through it again. But what you do is you kind of briefly, this was their way of doing it. You briefly place yourself in that place, and then you say, okay, if knowing what you know now, what would you do completely different? And do it. What would you do? Would you yell? Would you scream? Would you stand up? Would you say, get out? Like what would you do now that you didn't know then? And then get them to really process through that kind of scenario. So that becomes very dominant, and they feel like they've gotten some power back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that being a very empowering approach. I don't necessarily do that myself. What I typically do is I teach people about trauma first. I teach them about what's going on in their body. Why are they reacting so much, and how to manage what we call being triggered. So I always teach my clients about that first, and I make sure that they've got a sort of a grip on that before I move forward into doing EMDR. And I can't promise my clients. In fact, I tell my clients it could get worse before it gets better, because it's like we're resetting that broken limb, or we're tearing the scab off the wound and it's all infected in there, and we're going to clean it out. But I also let them know, that it's not happening in the now. It's us looking back at what's happened in the past. So.
Right. So I had a guest on, and he is he's very well known. He's an incredible, he's a YouTuber, but he during the show disclosed that he had been harmed, when he was young, and he was talking about just like the lifelong, just sort of the consequences of that having happened, and then also there was an opportunity for me to speak to him later, and he was literally at the age in his 60s now getting counseling that was really helping. But because he didn't get that specific counseling, because he wasn't addressing it for a lot of years, it just stayed put. So Do you think that with someone having the courage to speak to someone like yourself, to get the help needed, that this can become something in the past? I know famous people like Joyce Meyer. She was abused by her father. And she's able to say now from such a healed place, you know, she doesn't even regret anything that's ever happened to her because it made her so strong, you know, like such healing.
Yeah. Well, that's the concept of the Lord can use even the most horrible things that ever happened to us and bring good out of it somehow, right? He's not saying it's good it happened, but
No.
yes, abuse can affect men their entire lives. And I do think it's important that, you know, a lot of times when men go for therapy, they are reluctant to just blurt out, you know, hey, I'm here because I was sexually abused. Sometimes they don't even understand how much is impacting them. So they might end up in therapy because they're too angry or depressed or something like that. And far too often, unfortunately, therapists don't necessarily, you know, go there like they might with a woman, like, what's your history? Were you abused, kind of thing. So sometimes it could take years before a therapist will finally get a disclosure from them. So I advertise that I work with male survivors of sexual abuse and that I expect to talk about this. So I do get, like, Laura, I just had a client move out from Ontario, not necessarily to see me, but he told me he had attempted suicide 30 times. I know. I mean, like, a lot of pressure for me, but he said none of his therapists have ever let him talk about his abuse. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, you know, I mean, that has to happen if he wants to. I mean, you know, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but he does want to. And it's really important that we go that deep, right?
Do you think it is helpful for people to actually like just be able to unload, because it becomes this dark secret that's actually destroying you from within?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know, like, one of the participants in my book, he was abused by his mother every day of his life. He said, I don't want to relive it anymore. And I have to respect that. Absolutely. Why would he want to relive his entire abused childhood, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, at least he needs a witness to know that I understand. I believe what happened to you. He needs to hear that. He needs to be able to, you know, share the worst of the worst, only in the sense that, you know, he needs to have hope that you know, he can be healed. Basically, it's almost like he needs permission. It's kind of funny, but they somehow need to be seen and to know that, yes, even what happened to you, there's hope.
Okay, so Dr. Kelli, what do you think? If somebody is watching right now, should they get your books? Should they call you? A lot of people don't live where you live. Do you do over the internet consults, or how does that work?
I do, and I can consult with people. I can only do therapy with people who live in Alberta just because of my own licensing. But I mean, I've had people from the US and from BC call and consult with me. You know, we talk about next steps for them, finding a proper therapist. You know, I can just, you know, give psychoeducational pieces and support, but I can't do therapy with them.
Okay. And getting your books, what's the best place to get your books?
Amazon, Chapters, anywhere you buy books.
I love it. Well, thank you very much for what you're doing. I appreciate the information that you've shared. I hope that because this is becoming, you know, a topic that people like myself and others are willing to bring forward, that we're going to see more accountability with clergy, teachers, and people should be afraid that the victims are one day going to speak out against them. And do you recommend, one final question, is it healing for a victim to actually bring light the perpetrator, what they did, and to bring accountability? That's somewhat a traumatic, you know, thing to have to do, but is it helpful?
I mean, personally, I think it would be. I have encouraged, like, all of my clients that have, you know, an offender that's still alive to do that, at least to report it to the police, because, you know, it's like, you know, empowering, it's taking a stance. And I think that's important. It's also preventing further instances of abuse if we hold them to account, right? And of course we want to do that.
Thank you. All right. Well, Dr. Kelli Palfy, thank you very much. Thank you for writing the books. And sounds like if you've already done 4, there's probably many more in there. So keep on going. This is a very valuable topic, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Laura-Lynn.
Thank you so much. Okay. Good. And then we'll just come out of that, Dr. Kelly. Thank you. I thought that was really good, very informative. Thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank
I'm
you.
glad to know of you. I'll try and recommend anyone that I'm hearing of, because I do hear of people these days that
I
need
bet.
some help. So
I bet.
I'll,
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
you're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your patience. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Before we go today, I want to share with you this email. A viewer was asking, hi, Laura-Lynn, I hope you're keeping well and blessed. I remember you making a call to Planet Shakers in one of your videos about Joshua Brown, and wanted to speak to Pastor Russell Evans about Joshua Brown, past employment there, and also his involvement with another man, but he was not available to you, so you left a message for him. Did you ever make contact with Pastor Evans to find out more on this yet, or has it been forgotten and run to a dead end, and you have given up on pursuing it? I await your reply on the above, from Desiree. So I have never heard from Pastor Russell Evans. We have made numerous calls now, and it's the same thing. Everybody's covering for everybody. Can you imagine that as a Christian organization, you had a complaint written to you in a letter that homosexual advances from Joshua Brown were going on, and you ignored that complaint. You never did anything about it. And then this Joshua Brown goes on to America, marries Rachel, and no one says a word. Like, no accountability. Is there not protocol? You know, we talk about Matthew 18 protocol. So if you know something as a pastor, first of all, it should definitely have been dealt with Joshua Brown. To my knowledge, that never happened. And when a young woman, and even such as Rachel, whom we all find a little bit difficult, and she's pulled some stunts and she continues to kind of use unusual ways to get back at the podcasters and creates false accounts, all of this nonsense that goes on with Rachel. A completely uncontrollable person. And that's Joni's problem right now, that she has to deal with her. But can you imagine that Rachel, set her sights on a young man named Joshua Brown? It would have been real nice if Pastor Russell Evans would have paid attention, because he knew that there was involvement with Daystar, and would have maybe done a courageous thing so that some things could be exposed, so that perhaps Rachel Brown never found herself in this position of being united with an alleged predator. All of this blow up, all of this that has happened with Daystar. What if there never was a Pete in the mix? We'd still have a Doug in the mix. But you have to wonder, don't you? I mean, Joni was given opportunity to be challenged on her thinking and her actions. She had people with great credibility that were saying, you shouldn't be doing this. But Rachel was never given, to my knowledge, was never given that opportunity. I'll tell you what, on that level, I feel for Rachel. She is now trapped. She's now in a situation where she's fighting for her life all the time. And it's not going away. These things are hard. And when we see a lack of accountability in the church, and that people will not take others to task and will not expose wolves and predators, when they will not do that, there is more casualties, outfall. There are more victims every single time when me And you and the powers that be refuse to deal with wolves. So we can't do it anymore. We have to have a no wolf policy. We don't allow wolves here. There has to be full exposure, nonstop. And when things are going on that are not correct, we need to expose it. Every one of us, whistleblowers need to come forward. Whistleblowers need to speak and be courageous. Tell the truth and expose what's wrong. And don't be a coward. That's how we've gotten to this place. And it's brought disrepute to the kingdom of God. But I'll tell you what, God can fix everything. And he's doing it. And he won't be stopped. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much. If you like this kind of broadcasting and if you like this kind of truth-telling, then please let us know. Go to my website, Laura-Lynn.tv. There's lots of ways to help us. I appreciate it. I won't go on about it all. It's all there. You can mail, you can email, you can Zelle, you can e-transfer. You can do it, but only if you want to and if you believe that this is a worthy cause and if you believe that we're here to tell the truth. Thank you. Thank you for your help. It's because of you that we do this. We have no big organization. We literally started, 4 or 5 years ago just saying something's got to be done. And we basically went on Rumble to try to tell the truth because oftentimes the platform that you might be viewing us on right now wouldn't let us speak. So we got no funds. We just told the truth for a long time. And now we just trust the Lord. And it doesn't matter whether we have learned, like Paul, to live with a lot or a little, to be blessed or to kind of have a season of drought. We're okay because it just doesn't, it's not about that. It's not about the money. It's about the truth. So that's what we do. And that's our mail site that you see there on the screen. Also, for any of you that would like some Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole, please contact Mia at SozoHealth at proton.me. And also our gold and silver person that we trust and we think that you should be wise with your finances in this day and age. God very clearly told us a lot about finances. He talks a lot about it in the Bible. And we do believe he is a God of blessing. We just don't think he's a God that honors greed. And there's a big difference. So if you've got a tiny little nest egg, like I've told you this story before, but my pastor friend, she has like $200,000 in the bank. Her and her husband were steady savers. They don't have a big church or a big salary or anything. But for a lot of years, just, putting the money away. And I'm like, get that money out of the bank. The money keeps going down. Like the fiat currency and what we can trust and put our hope in it when it's not backed by gold, when there's all of these problems and different things with it. And it's a complicated matter. But when you've got gold and silver is steadily climbing, and silver recently has taken a huge plunge up, you want to maybe just put your money in that, and then you have it safe, and then you can bury it in your backyard or put it in a safe or put it in a some sort of storage or something like that. But keep it safe, but you have it, and it is growing. If you'd have done this 3 years ago, when we started talking about it, you wouldn't have lost as much as our fiat currency has just plummeted, especially in Canada. But JT and I monitor what's happening in the U.S. and in Canada because we are Canadian and U.S. citizens. So sovereignize at protonmail.com. Contact him. I want to leave you with a powerful word today. Psalms 91, verses 14 and 15. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for the joy and be glad all of our days. Make us glad as many days as you have afflicted us. For as many years as we have seen trouble, may your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest on us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Amen. Do you want the work of your hands to be established? Do you want to see that favor of the Lord on not only yourselves, but your future generations? Amen. Well, you know what? So it was interesting because I ended up reading as well the account of the woman who anointed Jesus' feet, the sinful woman. And so that is found in Luke 7. And I was thinking about how God establishes the works of our hands even when it is a repentance act, when it is that we are already righteous and good before Him. God establishes the works of our hands, and He honored this precious woman who came to Him not because she was righteous and did all the right things, but actually because she was broken and sinful and wounded. And it says this in verse 36 of Luke 7. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there, and with an alabaster jar of perfume, as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. And then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Can you imagine this act? Comes to someone's house pretty much uninvited, I'm assuming, and says, I need to see Jesus. And falls apart, tears coming down her face. Well, guess what? The Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, and he said to himself, oh my Lord, this woman's come in. And if Jesus was a real prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, and that she is a sinner. Which is interesting because the guy allowed her into his home, but he knew that she's of ill repute. She's a prostitute. She's a woman with a sinful, very sinful past. She shows up at the door unexpectedly, knocks on the door, I'm certain, comes in and this display, and she's crying. And the pious Pharisee sits back to say, well, if Jesus had really the knowledge that he claims to have, if he really is this great prophet, if he really is the Son of God, he would know. But the thing was, Jesus knew exactly who this was, and he loved her. And so Jesus answers him, and he said, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 people owed money, Jesus said, to a certain moneylender. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which one of them will love him more? And Simon replied, well, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Now this is the amazing part. Then he turned toward the woman and he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house and you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. To this Pharisee, this was a repulsive act. To Jesus, he knew this woman. He knew her brokenness. He knew this was the absolute repentance and breaking of her heart and her soul. You did not give me a kiss, he said to the Pharisee, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I will tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Jesus then said to her, your sins are forgiven. And the other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? I love this part, that God is saying that if you have been forgiven much, you're going to love God much. You're going to be overwhelmed with how great He is. It's one of the beauties of having a life redeemed. This is what it's about. And this is what God's heart is towards every one of us. When we repent, when we honor Him, it changes everything. Have a great day, everyone. See you tomorrow. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.lauralynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.